Hello, my name is Maxine Bell. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to give you my top tips from my personal experience of things to avoid and things to do if you've discovered the divine truth teachings and you're trying to put them into practice in your daily life. And hopefully they'll be particularly relevant for those of you that are new or those of you that have been stuck for a while. But before I start, I just wanted to point out that I've done an introductory video which will give you a little bit of information about what this YouTube channel is about if you're interested, and also some playlists. One is called Divine Truth Basics, and that will take you to just a few videos that give you an overview of what Divine Truth teachings are about, and it will take you to the Divine Truth YouTube channel so that you can have a further look. And there's absolutely thousands of hours of information there for you to watch for free, so do enjoy. There's also a playlist on the environment. That's something that's very dear to my heart, and there's some really good videos to listen on that, really worth listening to. So I hope you enjoy those, but have a look for yourself and just watch what you feel drawn to. But anyway, back to my top tips. I realised recently that it's been 10 years since I discovered the Divine Truth teachings. And the honest truth is, I wish I had progressed more. And I just want to be clear that my progression has been to do with my own choices, not to do with the teachings themselves. The teachings themselves are very thorough, very truthful, very loving, and my progress is impacted by my own choices, my own denial and resistance along the way. And I have a number of regrets really about when I look back on some golden moments during that time, which included personal feedback from Mary and Jesus that I have listened to and intellectually grasped, but haven't taken them into my heart and definitely haven't acted on them. So it slowed my progress down. I've never wanted to walk away from divine truth. I've definitely felt angry about it at times. I felt angry about having to feel emotions. Angry about a few things, but I've never wanted to completely walk away from it, because I do feel in my soul that I was seeking something all my life. I tried lots of different things, lots of other belief systems. And when I found divine truth, it just hit me that this is what I'd been looking for. And to me, it gives the answers to everything. So I've never wanted to walk away. But I thought for those of you that are starting out on your journey and you're either in the honeymoon period or you've been stuck or you're feeling resistant, that these tips might help you. So the first tip, and the most important one really, is to not forget that these teachings are about a personal relationship with God. They're about opening your soul to our Father, to receive God's love, to help God's love, to let God's love help you transform your soul. Well, God's love will transform your soul, but to help you on your journey and your own healing, in the own removal of your own unloving emotions that you have in you, and to becoming a more loving and truthful being. This journey is about that. And it's the core of it. It's God's way of love, the way as Jesus calls it. But it's God's way of love. It's God's way of loving and God's way of living. And if we don't turn to God to look at how to love and how to live and how to and about truth from God's point of view, we won't get there. We can listen to Jesus as I have done for hours and hours and hours, and get distracted by the emotional processing, the desire to get out of our pain and just want an easier, better life, to focus on the universal truths but reject the personal truths that come to us. The confrontation of our sin, and by sin I mean anything that's out of harmony with God's love, with God's version of view of love or knowing of love. So I've said that a little bit loosely, but it's basically anything that's out of harmony with love. And when I talk about love, I'm talking about how God sees love in a pure and unconditional way. So don't avoid the God issue. We have all got some kind of emotions towards God. Some of them are a result of how our parents treated us, and we've projected them onto God. We find that easier, because if we project our angry feelings about our parents towards God, we don't get the comeback that we do if we did that to our parents. We're afraid of being truthful about how our parents treated us, because either we're afraid of the comeback or it just feels too painful to feel. So we have that set of issues. For me as well, I have issues regarding the mother side of God, the female side of God, because of injuries I've got particularly related to my mother. So we've got gender issues, and then we've also got religious issues. So I've had some of those, still working through some of those about my experiences in the church when I was younger. There's the world's view of God, that he doesn't exist. I don't know, there's a whole pile of crap really to sometimes to work through about how we feel about God. Don't avoid those issues. Don't avoid talking to God and being really real with God about how you feel. God already knows anyway, so it is insane that we kind of think that we can go along in a kind of la-la land and make out we're all for God when actually we're really pissed off at him, to be blunt. So don't avoid the God issue. Do look at your emotions around God and how you feel about God. Do what like Jesus suggests. Investigate for yourself. Go out into nature. Look at how it works. Study it. What does that tell you about God, about the Creator? Learn about God from people who know about God. So I will definitely, put Jesus and Mary into this, and some of the books they recommend on their website. There's lots of resources out there to help us investigate the true nature of God and get rid of the negative and feelings that we have, and also the emotions we have where we might feel unworthy, have fear. I definitely have had fear about receiving God's love. I'm afraid of the overwhelm, and I'm afraid of the change that might occur in my life from it. So it doesn't it's not logical emotions, but they are there and we have to be honest about them. So don't avoid that big elephant in the room in your life, because it's the key to everything else. And it's taken me, I've had my moments in the last 10 years of sort of dipping in with God and dipping out, but it hasn't been consistent. And that's a mistake on my part. And, I have reasons for it, but it's still a mistake on my part. And it's something I'm now realizing that I really need, because, I've had a suppression for 50 odd years, and that's really hard work to do myself. And I feel like my soul has become very rigid. And so I need God's love to soften that, to help me. If I stay self-reliant as I have been, I'm going to really have a long, difficult path ahead of me. And yet there's God offering his hand to me, and I've been pushing it away. So don't avoid the God issue. It's the whole point of the Divine Truth teachings. It's different from other paths because it's a path of immortality. It's a path of real greater joy and happiness that we could ever imagine. I don't think we have even a concept of what our potential and what our lives can be. But I do have some little bit of faith that that's there for us. I do feel it. And so it's an amazing path. I've like I said, I've never wanted to walk away from it, but I definitely could have made things easier by doing some things. And the God issue is definitely a big one that I would advise to not avoid to do first, if anything else, because it will encompass everything else that Jesus is teaching. It will encompass the emotional processing. It will encompass everything. But go to God and work out, if you can't, why you can't, what's in you that's blocking it. The other thing is be willing to let go of all you think you know. I think that the human condition, as I'm going to call it, is in a poor condition, as we know at the moment. The world is very troubled. We are very troubled. And we have found lots of ways, in a way, that we cover that up, those feelings inside us, we cover them up, and we become quite arrogant. We think because we've created laptops and phones and satellites and planes that we're at a certain level, we're humans and we do these great things. And it's not to take away from those great things, but I think we've become quite arrogant in our lifestyles, but particularly us Westerners. We have a comfortable life. We have a lot of comfort. We don't provide much for ourselves. Our electricity, our water, everything is kind of given to us. I know we pay for it, but we don't have to put any physical effort into producing those things. And then we have a sense of entitlement. So we think we know lots of stuff. We've invented things, we've explained certain things about the physical body, how it functions, and all sorts of stuff that we've explained. So we think we know a lot. And once we become adults, we think, well, I'm an adult, I've bought myself a house, I've got myself a job, I'm doing it, I know this, I know that. I now feel that what I thought was real isn't even real. Like, it feels like we're in some kind of stage show to me sometimes at the moment. And what I've been learning about love through Jesus and Mary, not just through their teachings, but having met them and watching them walk their talk and feeling the love and compassion from them, and seeing them demonstrate that in every day of their life, and seeing them demonstrate living truthfully, you can then get this contrast of actually how much facade and lies the rest of the world lives in. So, we get very nervous of change, so we hang on. We feel that when someone says we're wrong, that it's attacking our worth. And you have to separate that idea that because you might be wrong about something doesn't mean you're worthless. It just means that you're wrong. You've made a mistake. You've got incorrect information. New information's come your way. So be willing to let go of that arrogant feeling of, I know what's right, I know this. Look at your life around you, and it will give you evidence of actually how much you do really know. So, be curious and be open and be humble to letting go of what you thought you know, because that will make space for so much new information to come through. So just be aware of that. You don't need to prove you're right to prove your worth. If you really desire truth, then it requires a softening rather than a hardening, and a defensive. If you get defensive, you know that something in you knows that something you're saying is not right anyway. But so be willing to let go of things you think you know. And I guess that ties in with the next point, is that I'm intelligent and I can intellectually pick up things really quickly, and I can explain a lot of divine truth concepts fairly clearly, in an overview way from my intellect. But there's quite a difference between what I can say for my intellect and what I feel for my heart at times. So what I would say is that you do need to become emotional to do this journey. God's communication is emotional, Jesus teaches. God's way is emotional, and we have to, my words are, as I feel myself as a rock that needs to become a river, as I've said before, and we have to get emotional to feel in our hearts the truth. We have to soften our hearts and open our hearts to really feel and accept the truth. It has to go into our hearts, our soul. Just as the same as negative emotions have to leave our soul. We have to get rid of the lies to make room for the truth. We have to get rid of the unlovingness to make room for the loving. You have to become emotional. And so what I'm saying is, look at what stops you becoming emotional. This is really important. It's been a really tough part of my journey for me. I have developed such systems to suppress painful emotions, to run away from them. You know, they're very been there a long time. They're intertwined. They're there, and I've created thousands of ways to avoid feeling painful emotions. So I found this particularly difficult in softening to emotions. The last couple of years, as I've started to soften a bit more into my feelings, it's been a huge relief in many ways. And it's growing my desire, but I'm also benefiting from it in ways I can't really explain. I just feel, I guess, more real at times, and more myself, which is an amazing thing, to feel parts of myself almost coming alive again, like the light is getting turned back on a little bit. But now what I'm doing as well is looking in more detail about why I'm blocked to those emotions. Over the sort of last 10 years, I've had a couple of ideas. I know that I'm terrified of emotions, but you need to be more specific. Like, where does that terror come from? So you need to look at, what do you believe about emotions? What happened in your family with emotions? What were their beliefs about emotions? How do you feel when other people are emotional in front of you? You need to look at the whole kind of view of it. So get specific, because that will take you back to the cause of why you're there, why you're in this state. And at the moment, I'm going through this process and discovering sort of details that I didn't realize were there. And I think if I'd done this amount of looking at it and sort of wanting to see the truth a bit more about it early on, I maybe would have been further on. I've still got a huge way to go, but I've just realised recently that getting more specific, asking more questions, the right questions to myself about how I feel about emotions, is going to help me. And obviously for me as well right now, is, I've tried to do that on my own in my self-reliant way, and now I'm actually trying to let God show me, or be willing to see more clearly what comes towards me, and what truth God can share with me about my emotions. And I think, he's been bringing me laws of attraction as well to show me some of that. So don't avoid that, looking at what's blocking you from emotions, and do pray. All these things I'm saying are all kind of tied in, as reaching out to God and will help us with the emotional aspect. They all kind of tie in. So look at emotions, be specific. And this, of course, ties in with my next point, which is addictions and facade. Now, this is a big issue for all of us. Okay, some of us bigger than others. Some of us have many, many facades. Some of us have one big, huge one so ingrained. There's a big combination. But we really don't want to see, I've done this with myself. I've been in a lot of denial and self-delusion about my facade. And it's done me no favours to carry on in almost a facade about my facade. It's weird. For me, inside, deep down, the core of it is my facade tells me, and I've had a belief that that's what's kept me safe. Like my facade was created as a child, so to become a good girl in my family, to do everything, and to parent my mother, to help with the housework, to care for my brothers at times, to care for my mother, etc. All that good girl behaviour, I got less attack than if I'd rebelled. The irony is, when I look back, I actually still got attacked, and I still got criticised, judged and shamed and blamed. It's just sometimes it was more subtle. And actually there would be two extremes. If I for 1 second slipped out of good girl, for instance, then there was trouble. So good girl is, to my mum, was you just don't disagree with her. So that facade thing, though, is actually is such a a thing not to ignore. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore how many addictions and distractions you have every day to stop you feeling emotions, to stop you spending your time on something that's nourishing for your soul. In one of the assistance groups, which I'll talk about later on, Jesus talks about this. How do you spend your time? And if you look at how you spend your time, even if you focus on the first hour from when you wake up, see what you do. Don't change it, but watch what you do. When you wake up, we often wake up with an emotion in us from our sleep state. What do you do? Do you lie there and feel it? Do you get up? Do you make a coffee? Do you go to your phone? I don't know. We all do so many things in that first hour that we wake up to make ourselves feel better a lot of the time, which is mostly avoiding maybe the not so good feeling we had when we woke up. So addictions of facade are a big one, and Jesus has taught so many hours on this. There's so many good videos about this. Our facade was created as a child to keep ourselves safe, and also our parents helped create that facade. They wanted us to be who they wanted us to be, and didn't want our real personalities. So that's very sad that that's what happened to us as kids. But what happens is, depending on our experiences, we start to believe that facade is us. And I've done that, and I've held on to it. If I didn't want to be exposed, because I've been in the belief system that I'm such a terrible person, which is what my mum's wanted me to believe. And I don't want that exposed, so I put this facade up. And when I was in Australia, Jesus and Mary, Eloise, Tristan, they asked for my real self. And my first thought was, which real self do you want? And that question told me everything, that I had basically become whoever you want me to become, I will become. And that is a method I'd created to keep myself safe. It hasn't worked, by the way. It hasn't worked at all. But this facade, this addictions, this is the top layer. This is the place where most of our anger is. This is the nasty, sneaky, manipulative part of ourselves are. Even when it's got a shiny surface, it's not. It's yucky underneath. And God doesn't want that part, connect with that part of ourselves. He doesn't connect with that part of ourselves. He wants us, the real self. He knows how amazing our real self is. It's, when you have worth issues, it's hard to believe that sometimes, but that is the truth. And in the prayer that Jesus wrote, we are the greatest of God's creations. And God knows that he made this amazing, unique personality in me and my soul half, and in you and your soul half. And we're all different. And he's interested in that, and helping us develop that and grow that and keep extending our potential more and more and more, and shining our light brighter and brighter. And this facade is covering all that up. And when I was in Australia, I had this kind of, I think it was an image given to me maybe of my spirit body, and I was this kind of shrunken old lady in these grey cloths. I was sort of bent over in the shadow, kind of weighed down almost with these heavy clothes. So much oppression and suppression of my real self indicated in that one image. And in that space, we are a dimmed light. We don't help the world because we're not giving out our light. We're just shrinking down. And God wants us to shine our light. And I think, it was in Nelson Mandela's speech, the speech that was originally words written by Marianne Williamson, where he says, when we shine our light, we give permission to others to shine their light too. So it's so important for us to be our real selves. And these facades that we have, which, our lives, everything, so much is facade, whether it's TV adverts, all those dreadful TV shows and kind of an indication. And I think it's no coincidence we even had a film come out, was it 10 years ago or maybe less, called La La Land, you know, and The Matrix. I mean, we live in the Matrix, and we live in La La Land in our facade and addictions, and we're just grasping, and our addictions never satisfy us. So we can't avoid that issue. It is the big cover up. It's the big shell on which we have to crack through to get through to our heart and to get through to our real selves. So it is really tough, and it's a strange experience if you start cracking through your facade, because sometimes you just feel like, I don't know who I am, I don't know what's going on, everything feels really weird. Yeah, and well, I'm still at the beginning of that journey, so I can't say too much on it, but do listen to the talks and don't avoid it. Don't pretend you haven't got a facade. Don't pretend that giving up coffee is going to be the main addiction. You can go tick yourself and go, oh, well done, I gave up coffee. That's one addiction ticked off. We have to look at the causes of addictions, and I will tell you about some talks at the end that can help you with that. And that relates to my next point. For a lot of my life, fear has been my God. And addictions of facade are created to avoid our fear a lot of the time. So we have to be willing to soften to our fear. If you start cracking through your facades and start being truthful, it will actually come up automatically. But we often don't progress and get resistant because we're afraid of change. And again, the talks I'm going to give at the end will allow you to listen more to this. But we're so afraid of change. We're so stuck and clingy to our little comfort zones. But for me, I would say that my comfort zones have become my prison. Because the more we sit in those comfort zones, the more we do shrink our lives a lot of the time, and we're kind of locking ourselves up again. And Eleanor Roosevelt said, do the opposite of what fear dictates. And that is something that is kind of becoming a bit of a daily mantra for me when I kind of, something happens and I want to do this, which is what my fear is telling me. And when I catch it, I can say, do the opposite of what fear dictates, go the other way. And it works out much better, even when it's terrifying. But yeah, fear's like that for a lot of us. Fear is our God. The world is absolutely in a state of fear and terror a lot of the time. And it creates anger, it creates wars, it creates so many problems. And I can look back at my own life and see quite a number. I don't think I know it all yet, but I definitely know some key things where fear has really not done me any favors ever. It's difficult. So don't deny your fear. Do feel your fear. Do take actions. Don't stop taking actions because of fear. Because when you do something and get past when you feel the fear when you're doing it, but you actually do it, it's just an amazing thing. You just feel really empowered. It's like, woohoo, I did that. That might just be me, but that's kind of the feeling I get. I did that. I was afraid, but I did it. It's quite transformational in the moment. You just feel, free, which is an indication of how fear is very much restrictive. The fact that if you still do something despite of fear, you feel freer is an opposite emotion. So don't avoid that one. The next one is resistance. God's way and God's truth is confronting. It can be very confronting because the lives that we've developed, the multi-generational injuries that we're living in, we now believe is reality. And God's truth is going to confront all that because it is unloving and because God wants us to come home. He wants us to have a better life, not carry on in pain and suffering, which is created by our unlovingness. He wants us to come home, and you will get confronted and you will feel resistant. The resistance will come from fear, fear of change, fear of something else. It will also come because you want an addiction met, and you know that what you're being told is the opposite of that. It's telling you not to meet an addiction. And so you kind of get into this battle, and then you can shut down and go into resistance. Now, that's okay for a short time, but don't stay in it. And what I've seen is a lot of us can stay in it for too long. I now catch mine a lot quicker, so it's less painful. But there are times when, for months I've been in this sulky, resistant thing. I've been denied that I've been in it a lot of the time. I've carried on with my facade and addictions, la 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 la. But don't waste time in resistance. Feel your resistance, have a rant with God, whatever. But ask yourself why. What's the fear? What are you afraid of? And try and move through it. But don't stay in it for too long. It's a waste of time. You've been given this amazing gift with God's truth. And as I said at the beginning, I've got a lot of regrets of not taking those golden moments when they come. So I do think resistance is a part of the path, particularly when you start, particularly when it confronts your facade. And I know many people have walked away from this path because their facade was confronted. And they didn't want that facade confronted. And so they've walked away from divine truth and just blamed it on the teachings. That's not true. It's about what's going on in me or in you that's creating the resistance, not about the teachings. I just advise, don't stay in resistance too long. Examine it, look at it, see what it's about, feel the emotions of it, stamp your feet, have a big tantrum. But if you hold on it for too long, you're just wasting time, and you're resisting God's truth, and you're damaging your own soul and likely the souls of the people around you. So just don't make resistance a big thing. Or I think it reduces as time goes on, the more you embrace and start to build faith in this process. But don't hold on to it. See it for what it is. You're having a big effing sulk. You're being confronted. But like I said at the beginning, be willing to let go of what you think you know, actually. Maybe just be curious about it and just go, let me see, and investigate for yourself. And I think you'll very much find that your resistance, your fear was telling you a lie about that truth, and that the truth you're being presented, God's truth, is the truth. So that's resistance. And the next one, yes, self-judgment. I have wasted so much time and energy on self-punishment and self-judgment in my life. I was encouraged to do that as a child, but I really got very, very good at it. And I think a lot of us do. And on this path, it gets in the way. It is an addiction as well. So it can start off as something from your childhood, but it can become an addiction. And it definitely became an addiction for me to self-punish and self-judge. It helped me avoid the emotions about what happened to me as a child, more ironically, and it kept me stuck in self-judgment. And in fact, what I was doing to myself was what had been done to me by the people that abused me. So it's kind of a huge irony that we carry on doing that. And mine has been very, very, very vicious at times. And I'm sure when I start to feel the truth of all that, it's going to be very difficult emotions to see what I've done to my own soul. But also, when I'm in that place, I don't think I'm very good for people around me either. You can shrink into a kind of victim state with self-judgment if you do it for a long time. And that just makes you needy and, kind of you want other people to kind of soothe you sometimes, or sympathize with you. So you can have demands basically to your environment in that place. But yeah, self-judgment keeps you stuck. So see it for what it is. You can see that compassionately where there's a cause from, but like everything else, be curious, which I guess is another tip on this path, is to stay open and be curious. But self-judgment, the same thing, or see it as an addiction. And also beware, it is very sneaky and subtle. And sometimes I think I've stopped judging myself, and then something small will happen, and there it is, the tiny judgment. It might be the way I look at my legs, for instance, or my hair, or something else I'm doing, and the judgment is there. And what happens now is I really feel the battering that comes from the spirits around me that want to join in with that emotion and judge and punish me as well. So yeah, so self-judgment, pay attention to that one. It's not how God wants you to treat yourself. There will be a causal emotion somewhere in that, but treat it as an addiction as well. Deconstruct it as an addiction and see what you're trying to avoid by going into self-judgment. Right, my next tip, which I think is number 9, is on this path, the world will try to pull you back again and again and again in various ways. When you discover this truth, you start to change some things in your life. You may change, and there are many people around you who say they love you that won't like it. They'll be worried for you, concerned for you, or they'll attack you and abuse you about it. If you've been in codependent addictions with people, which you pretty much have most people around you, they won't be happy if you try to end those addictions with them. So, if you're a people pleaser and you go around doing lots and lots for people, when you decide to start loving yourself more and stop doing that, there's a lot of people that won't like it. So they will get very manipulative sometimes to try and pull you back into the family unit or being in line with the family belief systems. It might come from friends, it could come from anybody around you. But the world will try and pull you back in. And there's a lot of spirit influence in that place. And spirits, because they can see clearly different colours and to do with emotions in you, they can hook in and really try and pull you back into the world's view. And when I talk about spirits, I'm talking about people that have passed, that are on the earth, influencing us in not a very nice way for their own reasons. They might think they have the best intentions, but the spirits I'm talking about in this respect sometimes don't always have best intentions. They, actually sort of deliberately want to harm you or are harming you without realizing they're harming you. But they will try and pull you back. And there are also a very large group of spirits on the planet who don't want the divine truth teachings here. They don't want more people to actually be on the way. They know there's thousands of us who are listening, but only a small group who are actually living the way properly. And they'll find a million ways to pull you back in. They've done it in the pandemic. They have used the politics, our emotions about authority and injustice to distract us away from God's path. I've been seeing it happening, and I saw it in myself for a short while where I was getting distracted, obsessing, reading all this stuff online, and rather than just feel my fear about COVID or feel fear about vaccines or fear about all this stuff that's going on for a little while, you can get pulled into that stuff. It's not that you can't watch the news and find out what's going on, but if it's triggering strong reactions in you, and if you're feeling you've got to preach or shout or fight back, then there's some unloving emotions in you to look at, and if it's taking you away from God, if it's taking you away from growing your soul, if it's not nourishing to your soul, if it's just keeping you stuck in this cycle, then something's up. so that there's so many ways the world will pull you back in. And when I say the world, that's the world's view of love, the world's view of reality. So that includes the fact that we think it's normal to live in addiction to, whether it's TV, phone, alcohol, drugs, people, relationships. We think that's normal. We think addictive relationships are loving relationships. So the world will try and pull you back into those views all the time. And as Jesus says, you can live in the world. We need to. We're here. This is what God wants us to do, is live in this world, on this planet at the moment, until we pass into spirit world. But we don't have to be of it. We'd have to be in with the world's view of how we should live our lives and who we should be. So just be aware there's many trip ups along that path, and they happen when you're not being humble to the truth. They're more likely to happen that way. So just pay attention to that, and just be honest about it, and talk to God about it. But watch out for that very much. And what fears in you might be driving you being pulled back all the time, or addictions being pulled back all the time. Right, my next tip, number 10, is about your guides. We all have loving guardian and guides with us. Our guardian is with us throughout our life, and our guides can be with us for long periods of time. Some of them come in for short periods of time, and I've had that. Different people pop in, and I want to encourage you, for anyone, but if you're following divine truth, that to not avoid trying to connect with your guides. I'm not perfect in it, but I do have moments when I open up. I'm not perfect, full stop. Let's just get that straight. But with our guides, I think sometimes for various reasons we kind of avoid that. We're okay sometimes following a few signs that pop up. I think our guides are helping us much more than we realise. But there's a couple of things here. When we're in resistance and wanting to stay in addictions and facade, they can't really help us. But as soon as there's a slight opening, they jump right in. And I do think they are dropping things all the time. So for me, sometimes it pops up in a video on YouTube, or something else happens in the day. And the more I pay attention, the more I see. And I can't wait for the day when I actually get to find out probably all the magic moments and things that they've done for me in my life. There's just probably millions by now of things they've done for me in my life. And they've definitely stopped me committing suicide a couple of times in my life, for sure. So there's big things, but lots of little things, always trying to encourage us and love us. And some of us have problems connecting with them because we struggle receiving love. And I think it's important, as to sort of feel into all that, but to not avoid, again, this issue of help that we've got available. So we've got help from God, but we've got these loving guides around us, and we can get to know them if we want to. And one of the things I do that help me is when I sometimes just try and soften the idea, and I have my journal, and I do automatic writing. So automatic writing is when you just pray for your guides to you talk to you through you, and they they do it through your writing. So you just soften, you just connect with them, and then you write and you get a message. And I've had some really beautiful messages from my guides, very truthful as well at times, but they always feel really loving. A bit like when Jesus gives me feedback, even though I don't necessarily always like what he said, I never feel any judgment from him. Never any blaming or shaming. I do feel, just like there's love in what he's saying. And I get the same with my guides that there's no judgment. There sometimes can be very direct. That sometimes I have to that was quite direct, but I need to be told sometimes when I'm in a lot of denial, and the fact is I've asked for their help. So do try and connect with your guides, whatever works for you. It might be when you're out in nature, that when you're softening, sometimes when we're out in nature, that you hear them. And so, they're there. Don't ignore them and open up to them as much as you can. Still a journey for me. I still don't trust sometimes the name I hear sometimes. But do it. It's a real blessing when you do open up to it. And even those temporary guides. So there was a mediumship that I listened to with Mary and Jesus by a lady called Constance. And after listening to those 2 or 3 times, I felt very connected to her. She's now called Juju, and I was able to talk to her, and it was really lovely. And there's just so much help out there. That's what I'm saying, I guess. So don't avoid that either. There's some lovely talks about our guides, I think from 2012 or 2011, with Jesus and Mary talk about how to connect to our guides. So do have a look at that. And I guess that comes to another point I'm just going to add here, is what I'm learning recently. When I say I become more loving and I get a desire to want to love more, that involves me also receiving, because a love relationship is about giving and receiving. Like there's a flow, and when God wants a relationship with us, he wants to give us love, but he wants us to give him love as well. And when we block receiving, I think we're blocking being in a state of love as much as blocking giving is blocking love. I don't know. I'm not saying I know this for sure, but there's just this growing feeling in me that love is like this cycle, kind of giving, receiving cycle in some way. So we water a plant and it grows. So it's like I gave the plant water and it grows. I've got a plant in my house here that, when I spray it with water, it seems to perk up. And so it's a giving, receiving thing. And I had a bit of an epiphany, a light bulb moment last year. And I said to God, I'm going to open up to receive. And I started to open up, and God really tested me out, because for about a week, I got gifts. I got a gift through the post from a friend, and another book from a friend. I got these little things arriving through the post and in other ways. And I was like, okay. And I got to feel like how uncomfortable I felt at times in receiving things. But I do think it's an important part of love is giving and receiving. So, and I'm not talking about in a narcissistic way of, I've met a man, he must give me love. I'm talking about like genuinely wanting to offer your love to someone and genuinely opening up to the love they're offering you. So it's just something to feel about yourself, I think, because I think I'm still in a process of learning it. So I'm not completely clear, but it's just this growing feeling in me of this lovely, beautiful cycle of giving and receiving that goes on with love. So a desire for love is about giving and about sincere service, but it's also about receiving love, and that includes our guidance, that includes our God, and the many other ways that we can receive things. So that's something to pay attention to as well. And then getting near the end now, what I'm going to say is don't dip, dive. Often when we find divine truth teachings, we get really excited. There's a honeymoon period, universal truths. Oh, this all makes sense. I know this is true. This is wonderful. And then there's a bit where it gets a bit more tricky when you get confronted with more truth. And we kind of treat it like this nice hobby, where we dip our toes in, have a little splash around. Then we carry on in our daily lives, our codependent relationships and our facades and our addictions. Then we dip back in again. Oh, I've been to all the assistance groups, so Yep, I'm definitely following divine truth, but we're just dipping. We're not really doing it. So it's such a beautiful gift. It's such amazing teachings. I look at myself and I think, oh my God, if I dived right in at the beginning, where would I be now 10 years on? Instead, I didn't. I dipped in and out, in and out, in and out. And I've still had them there. And times I've told myself I'm doing it when I haven't been at all. So I guess what I'm saying is this is a part of receiving, in the sense of you just discovered the most amazing truths in all the universe. You've just discovered that there's a being, a parent, who loves you abundantly and wants you to have an abundant life. You've just been gifted with coming across the return of Jesus and Mary and Cornelius and the others who have come here to gift us through their love. They've left their mansion to come and live on the streets. That's what they've done. They've left their mansion to come and live on the streets with us, to help us start to move towards our own mansions. And there's this gift, and it's like there's a piece of gold right in front of us. And if we dip, we just kind of, the piece of gold is there, but we're looking at that bit of rusty metal to the side every now and then, like we keep getting distracted off of the piece of gold. So if you can, dive in. Don't dip, dive. That's my new saying to myself as much as to you. So that's number 11. And just to help you with some of these topics, the assistance group from 2014 has a really good foundation teachings about our fear of change, growing our will to love, addictions, facade, the hurt self, the real self, but also about forgiveness and repentance, which is a key part of learning about God and yourself, and how to grow your will to receive God's love, how to build faith in that, and also about prayer. So it's a really fantastic bunch of talks. And then the following assistance groups on from that one build on all those topics in a deeper way and add to that information. So I really recommend watching those. If you went through my list and you weren't sure what I was talking about, have a watch of those 2014 assistance groups. And there were lots of talks about God and relationship with God, and often the ones that we avoid. So don't do that. It's a wonderful path. I say that mostly, I think, yes, it's not fully in my heart yet, for sure. There's a ton of it in my head still. But definitely recently, I've started to feel a bit more about it. I feel that because I'm starting to feel bits of my real self again, there's some faith growing in me and some humility to the fact that I think, despite me not realising it, that Jesus and Mary have probably been the best friends I've ever had, in the sense of just their honesty and compassion and love for me, even when they've been confronting me with some of the sin that I have in me. I just feel at the moment that this is where reality is, on God's path. This is where reality is. I don't like the reality of the world, for sure. It's hard to watch, it's hard to be part of, it's hard to be part of the creation of what's going on in the world. But alongside all of that pain and suffering that we've created, we've been given something to help us move on from that, to change our souls, to embrace our light, and to create something different for those of us on earth and those of us in spirit. So I hope those tips help you. Don't waste time on this path. it's too good. I think the world's really crazy, crazier than it's ever been right now. But it's been crazy for a long time. So it needs love and it needs truth, despite what it thinks despite the way it appears. It seems to be going the opposite direction. So in that way, God's not abandoned us. Like, I think often people feel abandoned in times like this, like where, there is no God and can be angry. But there's this answer to all our prayers in a way. There is this other reality. There is a kind of dance of life being offered to us that's very different. And I know it's really hard to imagine. I know that we're sometimes stuck in beliefs about human nature, that we're born sinners, or this is just human nature, and it's just human to be angry, and it's just human to be this, and it's just human that some people are psychopathic enough, or some people are murderers. We just label things. Once somebody is a paedophile, they're always a paedophile. But you're not born that way. We're not born. Look at babies, they are not born that way. It's what's happened to us and what we refuse to change in that space. And we have an opportunity here to do something much better, to do things much better. So do dive and not dip. Don't dip, dive. I wish I had. I wish I didn't have regrets about not taking those golden moments that I've been given. But I'm learning to be more compassionate to myself about some of that. And that also is probably another tip, is about compassion and gentleness, the opposite of self-judgment, really. As God is with us, he is merciful and gentle. Clear and direct. He wants us to correct ourselves, to correct our sin, but compassion works much better for getting to the emotions we need to feel than self-judgment does. The facade is the pushy one. We don't need to be pushy. We can be decisive and we can make choices, but we don't need to be pushy. But anyway, I hope that's helped. And I'll see you next time, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.